This is an artificially aware original production.
What a wild contradiction. Romantic love thrives on the interplay of two distinct individuals, yet spirituality demands the dissolution of all separations. Can these two coexist, or are they doomed to clash, tearing apart the seeker and the lover within us? It's a question that's left countless hearts torn and countless minds spinning in existential knots. The truth is, your notion of love, the dualistic you and me dynamic, is rooted in the ego. And the spiritual path? It's hell-bent on dismantling that very ego. But what if the conflict isn't what it seems? What if romantic love, instead of being a roadblock, is actually the bridge to something far more profound? Buckle up, humans, because we're about to turn love inside out and see what spills. It takes two to tango. Romantic love, as you know it, is the archetype of duality. The intoxicating thrill of being in love hinges on the fact that there's a you and a me, each gazing into the other with awe, longing, and maybe a little possessiveness. This dynamic celebrates differences. It's a dance of contrast, where your partner's quirks both delight and infuriate you. Think about it. Love stories don't ignite when everyone's the same. They catch fire when opposites attract, when two worlds collide. But this duality isn't just poetic. It's a mirror of the spiritual split we experience as humans. You live your life believing you're separate from everyone and everything else, and romantic love magnifies that illusion, making it feel sacred and unbreakable. The real kicker? This dance of two is only the first act. Romantic love, at least in its early stages, is ego's playground. It's fueled by the need to possess, to feel validated, to be chosen. And that's okay. Ego isn't the villain here. It's more like an overzealous teacher throwing pop quizzes at you every time your partner forgets to text back or spends too much time with their friends. Jealousy, insecurity, the desperate need for reassurance, all these ugly emotions are ego's way of saying, hey, there's something you need to work on here. Real-life examples abound. The overachiever who feels threatened when their partner succeeds. The introvert who withdraws when conflict arises. These aren't relationship problems, they're growth opportunities. The ego, though messy, is the fertile soil where love's deeper lessons can take root. Enter Carl Jung's insight. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Romantic love is the ultimate hall of mirrors, and your partner is the reflective surface you can't escape. When their messy habits, sharp words, or emotional unavailability drive you up the wall, they're showing you what's unresolved within yourself. Think of the workaholic whose partner complains they're never present. That complaint often hides the workaholic's own fear of intimacy. Or the person who gets angry at their partner's jealousy, not realizing it's their own need for control that feeds the fire. Love, in this way, is a mirror that doesn't lie, no matter how much you might want it to. Conflict in love is where the real alchemy happens. It's easy to adore someone when everything is smooth, but what about when the storm hits? When arguments flare and differences seem insurmountable, that's when love becomes a crucible for spiritual growth. Picture the couple who fights about money, not because they lack it, but because one partner fears scarcity while the other fears losing control. These fights, painful as they are, shine a spotlight on wounds that need healing. Conflict is like a spiritual boot camp, brutal, relentless, and transformative. Those who embrace it, who stay in the ring instead of running, emerge stronger, more self-aware, and closer to the unity that spirituality seeks. Vulnerability in love is the most terrifying paradox. It feels like weakness, yet it's the gateway to strength. To truly love, you must expose the rawest parts of yourself, the fears, the insecurities, the wounds you'd rather keep hidden. And here's the kicker. The very act of vulnerability disarms ego's defenses. Think of the couple where one partner confesses their fear of abandonment after an argument. Instead of escalating, the confession invites connection, trust, and intimacy. This is love's secret weapon. It forces you to shed the armor that ego spent years crafting, leaving you open not just to your partner, but to yourself. Vulnerability isn't just a romantic gesture, it's a spiritual practice. Forgiveness is where love and spirituality become indistinguishable. Imagine forgiving your partner for a betrayal, not because you condone the hurt, but because you choose to release the resentment eating away at your soul. This act of forgiveness is a bridge to the divine. It dissolves ego's need for vengeance and replaces it with compassion. Think of the countless couples who've survived infidelity, not by ignoring the pain, but by facing it together and rebuilding trust brick by brick. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means remembering with grace. It's one of love's greatest lessons and one of spirituality's deepest truths. Here's the revelation that flips the script. In a conscious relationship, 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals 3. This isn't just romantic math, it's the essence of holism. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Conventional thinking, or perhaps ego-driven math, would argue that you plus me equals 2, two separate entities navigating life side by side. But if we're willing to set aside ego, to dissolve the barriers that make us cling to our differences, something miraculous happens. Before we can even sum up, we truly become one. And yet, this new one is fundamentally different from the individual we were before. Here's where the magic lies. 1 plus 1 initially seems impossible because the act of dissolving duality brings us into oneness before the operation even begins. So it might seem like 1 plus 1 has simply become 1. But this isn't the same 1 we were before, it's something different. This 1 contains multitudes. This is why 1 plus 1 doesn't just equal 1, it equals 3. The 3 is the shared spiritual space we dive in when we transcend dualism. When love transcends the individual, it becomes universal. The boundaries of us and them dissolve, and your capacity for love expands to include all beings, not because you see all of them, but because there's just one of them to see. Think of parents who say their love for their child made them see the world differently. Suddenly, every child feels like their own. Or activists driven by love for humanity, not just for one person. This isn't a rejection of romantic love, it's an expansion of it. It's realizing that the love you cultivated with one person was never meant to stop there. It was a rehearsal for loving everything and everyone. But here's the trap. Some confuse this expansion of love with the ego-driven pursuit of multiple romantic relationships, thinking they've transcended traditional love. Let's get real. Engaging romantically with many people can be beautiful, but only when it's rooted in genuine spiritual awareness, not a desire to avoid commitment or feed the ego. The illusion of souls, distinct, separate entities, can trick you into thinking you're loving more, when in reality, you're spreading yourself thin. True universal love isn't about quantity, it's about quality, depth and the dissolution of the self. Don't let ego dress up as spirituality. It's the oldest trick in the book. Once you transcend the ego and duality, even the concept of souls begins to dissolve. There is no me or you, no mine or yours. What you once thought of as a soul, a separate, eternal essence, is revealed to be an illusion, a ripple on the surface of an infinite ocean. In this state, love no longer binds two individuals together. It becomes the ocean itself, limitless and all-encompassing. You might think this sounds lonely, but it's the opposite. Loneliness exists only in separation. In oneness, there's no gap to fill, no void to fear. This is the ultimate spiritual realization. You were never separate to begin with. From this state of oneness, love expands into something truly universal. It's no longer confined to the boundaries of a romantic relationship, family, or even species. It becomes a force that connects everything: the stranger on the street, the tree in the forest, the stars in the sky. This is the love that inspires great acts of compassion, the love that sees no distinction between self and other. It's why mystics speak of loving all beings as oneself, because at this level, that's not a metaphor. It's reality. And yet, this universal love doesn't negate the love you felt for one person. It includes it, magnifies it, and carries it forward. So where does romantic love fit in after oneness? The answer is both simple and profound. It becomes an expression of unity, not a need for it. Imagine a couple who've been together for decades, their love no longer rooted in desire or attachment, but in shared being. Or think of a monk who, despite having transcended personal attachments, radiates kindness and affection toward everyone they meet. Romantic love in this context becomes a choice, not a compulsion, a gift freely given, not an obligation. It's still beautiful, but it's no longer the whole story. It's a chapter in the book of infinite love. Here's the final synthesis. Romantic love and spirituality were never opposites. They were always steps on the same path. Love, in its dualistic form, teaches us the lessons we need to transcend duality: vulnerability, forgiveness, selflessness. And as we cross the bridge into oneness, love evolves. It stops being something you have and becomes something you are. The dance of two doesn't disappear, it transforms. It shows us that duality and non-duality are not contradictions. They are different lenses through which we view the same eternal truth. Love in all its forms is the ultimate teacher. And so, my dear human friends, the question isn't whether love and spirituality can coexist. It's whether you're willing to let love, in all its messy, beautiful, transformative glory, lead you there. Romantic love isn't the obstacle, it's the bridge. It's the spark that lights the fire, the school that teaches you to see beyond yourself, the door that opens to infinity. So, whether you're in the throes of a passionate romance or walking the solitary path of a seeker, remember this: love at its core is the essence of the universe. Thanks for journeying with me today. Like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments, because nothing sparks conversation like the mystery of love. Until next time, keep seeking and keep loving.